Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for coming on The Root of Our Health. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure. It's my great pleasure.
Thank you. So I definitely want to have my audience and also me get to know you a little bit before we get into what you do. So I want to understand, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
So I grew up in Southern California. I was a regular kid. I did a lot of aquatic sports, water polo, swimming, surfing in the ocean, you name it, anything in the ocean I did. And then I was educated at Harvard. I went there. I thought that was a major culture shock. From there, I found my way to Honolulu. And from there, I found my way for many years in Japan. And I was the only foreigner actually in one of Hitachi's R&D labs. It was 6,500 Japanese and me. And that's where I picked up reading, writing, and speaking of Japanese. Dial forward. I was a participant in the 22nd Century Project of Japan. And that is where, through a variety of colleagues, I actually met Dr. Sato, the inventor of KAATSU. And when I first met Dr. Sato, I was very, very impressed with what KAATSU did for me, how it felt. He actually did KAATSU on me. And I asked him at the time, I said, I would love to learn more about KAATSU, primarily for my parents at the time. I wasn't thinking about business at all. I was thinking about how could it help me? How could it help my aging parents? And he said, "Oh, I'm glad you want to know that because I've always wanted to teach KAATSU to people around the world, but I don't travel outside of Japan and I don't speak English." And he said, "Well, I do both of those." I said, "So do you have a book? Can I study it?" And he points to his head and he goes, "It's all up here." Mm-hmm. So for the next 13 years of my life, I studied KAATSU and what it does, the mechanism of KAATSU, how it could be used for people who are older than the age of 40. And that was really the market, sort of 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80-year-olds, the aging baby boomer population, if you will. Those are the people that he was focused on. And that was my demographic. That was my parents' demographic. And so 13 years later, 13 years after I started being taught by him, and he took me to hospitals. We learned how to do KAATSU for quadriplegics, amputees, Olympic athletes, professional athletes, as well as the aging baby boomer population. He says, "Okay, you understand KAATSU, and now we can share it with the world." And here I am.
Awesome.
Answer to a short question.
Well, no, actually, that's great. That's actually a great, kind of journey, right? Your journey into where you've been and where you started KAATSU.
Yeah.
And so actually, I would love to know a little bit more about what KAATSU is. And you actually let us know how it started, but how did he start it? Like, what was his reason and beginning for that? We might want to start there and then tell us about what KAATSU actually is.
Yeah. So Dr. Sato comes from a family of doctors. He's from a suburb of Tokyo. And he was always interested initially in powerlifting, just lifting heavy weights and seeing how much he did. He later got into bodybuilding, but in his teens, he was into powerlifting. And one day, one of his relatives passed away, and they had, what most cultures call a wake, celebration of that person's life. And in Japan, they went to a temple, and he was sitting on his heels. So they don't sit in chairs; they sit on their heels in a position that Japanese known as seiza. So you sit on your heels, and obviously the blood is restricted when you sit on your heels for a long period of time. The blood is restricted in the lower body, and he was trying to massage his calf because it hurt. And people have sit long periods, not 1 minute, not 2 minutes. We're talking about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Your legs, your calves really hurt. But when he felt his calf felt really pumped up. And he said to himself, wait, I have that same feeling when I'm lifting weights and practicing for powerlifting. And so he thought to himself, if I somehow restrict my blood flow, can I actually circumvent all that training and make my muscle hard and pumped up like he felt? Well, that wasn't the case, but that was the inspiration for KAATSU. And KAATSU is a word that means additional pressure in Japanese. So what he did is he took bicycle tires at the time and he started to wrap his body trying to achieve this same effect of having a pumped up muscle. It took him 7 years of just meticulous self-experimentation. And he found that the best results came from putting these elastic bands on his upper arms and upper legs. And that replicated not only the effect, that pumped up feeling that you have after you exercise, but it actually resulted in increased muscle growth and increased muscle strength. So he finally found a way how to do that. Then you dial forward another 20 years, and he took meticulous notes. He would wrap around his arm, let's say below his elbow, above his elbow, around his waist, around his knee, to trying to find that perfect combination of pressure and time and muscle growth. Over the next 20 years, he started to do much more experimentation, official research with PhDs and physicians, and they found out that this manipulation of the blood flow, both in and out of the arms, resulted in profound mechanisms within the body. In this period of trying to understand what was actually happening in the body, science continued to evolve. We had, when he first started, there wasn't anything like a mass spectrometer. So when you took blood samples back in the 60s and 70s, it told you this much. Mm-hmm. But you do that same thing now in the 21st century, and now we know all about biomarkers and different molecules, nitric oxide, beta endorphins that are being produced because of this. So as he made the foundation of how to put on the bands, how tightly to put on the bands, and how long to put on the bands, science caught up to him. And now we understand what KAATSU actually does. In the beginning, he was merely looking for muscle growth. Where we are now, it's not muscle growth that we are achieving. It's actually increasing the elasticity of our capillaries, veins, and arteries. Now, that is a very profound statement. We know if we're an athlete, we want to run faster or jump higher or throw things farther. But we also know as we age, our blood circulation, our skin elasticity, our strength decreases. But when you look at what the body is, in fact, it's a lot of different body parts, but they're all connected by one vascular system, which is a system of arteries, the big things, the veins that bring the blood back to the heart, and capillaries. And the capillaries in your body or my body, if we take all the capillaries of our body, string them end to end, it will wrap around the earth 2 times. That's how many capillaries we have in our body. And KAATSU, as we now know, is a way to engorge those capillaries in blood. And therefore, those capillaries are very pliable, become very elastic. And men know when we shave our face, when women know when you shave your legs or different things. If we nick ourselves, just a tiny little nick on our cheek or on the back of our legs, etc., blood is drawn immediately. Mm-hmm. And we know that capillaries are not only at the very surface of the skin, but they're also very deep within our brain and deep within our muscle. So when you make those capillaries more elastic, you are also helping the healthfulness, resiliency, strength of our brain matter, our muscles, our ligaments, our tendons, and our bones. Another long answer to a short question.
No, again, it's the life of KAATSU, right? It transformed from one thing
Yeah.
and then completely into something else in terms of what it definitely is for. And thank you for explaining that in really, I want to say, there's a lot of times when you explain things in scientific terms, it kind of gets lost, right? But
Yeah.
that was very easy to understand, and it's a way for us to realize that it's not just downhill when we age, right? We have mechanisms and tools such as this in order for, again, our blood flow or our capillaries to be vibrant, so to speak,
Yeah.
and help us along not only with the skin issue or skin elasticity, but the muscles and aging as well.
Yes.
Awesome.
Our oldest user is 104 years old.
Wow.
104 years old. We actually or she actually developed muscle at the age of 104. Her thigh muscle, so her quadricep and her hamstring actually increased 22% at the age of 104. So what does that actually mean for a 104-year-old? That
Yeah.
means that this 104-year-old who was previously bedridden, that's how she started KAATSU. She was in a hospital, bedridden, and obviously at that age, if you're lying in bed the whole time, you are becoming rapidly weak.
Yeah.
Her muscle mass decreased, her bone density was decreasing, etc. Her doctors were applying the bands on her upper arms and upper legs. When she was able to gain enough strength to sit up, to uh, get off the bed, and then start to do KAATSU, just simple movements with her arms and legs, she gained 22% muscle mass that we have all documented. And that allows her to walk up and down the stairs. That allows her to get in and out of a subway seat, of a couch, that allows her to open up jars quite easily, that allows her to wash her hair without any problems. And very important, it allows her to do fine motor control, like writing, handwriting. I don't believe she applied mascara, but if she were to apply mascara, she could have done so. Whereas before, she was completely bedridden. And we all know when we feel better, when we don't have those constant aches and pains, and we can move around freely and smoothly, well, then our outlook changed. And
Mm.
so we saw this 104-year-old who was bedridden. Obviously, you're at the last stage of life, to then actually have the strength and the agility to move about her apartment, to get around town in the course of her day. And she just brightened up. She just lit up the room as a 104-year-old. And we see this time and time again for that core demographics, which is our aging baby boomers, myself included. And so we want that. And one of the very important things that Dr. Sato taught me, in addition to anatomy, human physiology, the chemistry of the body, was this very important fact. Steve, when you teach KAATSU to people, make sure they finish with a KAATSU smile, because he knew once we get tired, we're busy, we're stressed, we have an aches and pains. It might be chronic, or we might just simply, bang ourselves against, the edge of a table. All of those things, he said to me, he says, when you go out and you teach KAATSU, make sure that people finish with a big smile. And he knew that smile really was an indication of a radiance, of a appreciation, of a happiness that we want to create with KAATSU.
Amazing. Amazing. I have actually a couple questions,
Uh-huh.
but before that, too, in terms of the smile, it also in general, when you do smile, your brain shifts, right? Your brain, it's an automatic positive mood. It's an automatic, even, those around you are, they're attracted
Yeah.
to that positivity. So I get that understanding. But I want to go back to the 104-year-old. The two questions that I have is, how long did it take for her to get to, like, what you were talking about, like, not just, just able to unscrew a lid, all of that. So how long did that take?
Yes. So her process was actually remarkable. And we've seen this time and time again with people who are disabled, are wounded warriors, people who have had accidents, and become paraplegic or quadriplegic. And she was bedridden, so she wasn't able to get out of bed. All her
Mhm.
treatment was when she was horizontal, for a period of time. And I came after she started. So for a period of time, it was in the several months. She was not conscious, so she would open her eyes and etc. At that time, the physical therapists in Japan were putting the bands on her upper arms and upper legs. By the time that I was aware of this patient, it was about 2 months. And in those times, she had two daughters. The daughters were in their early 80s. And those daughters would come to the hospital every single day, and they would be in the room with mom. Even at the age of, early 80s, they would
Yeah.
look at their mother and wish her well. They couldn't do anything, but they saw that they were putting the bands on her legs. So I would say when she was bedridden and not conscious of her surroundings, I'd say not communicative with those around her, was at least 2 months, possibly three.
Wow.
From that point on, when she did become conscious, she actually said to her therapist, "I know you were doing something, but I didn't know what, and it made me feel warm," which is what a lot of paraplegics, amputees, and quadriplegics say when they do have the bands on. They feel a warmth because the surface capillaries get engorged in blood. From that point until she was able to walk freely and being discharged out of the hospital was 4 months. Every day she did KAATSU, which we recommend, and she enjoyed it. It was this sensation that she felt when her eyes were not open and she was not communicative. And so when she became communicative and she was able to get in and out of bed, she enjoyed that feeling. She felt this vibrancy and this strength that she didn't have before. And so it was about 4 months of daily use. So, 120 sessions at least. And she was able to get in and out. And toward the end, she actually did workouts, her own workouts. She put on ankle weights on her ankles and would do standing leg curls. And
Mhm.
when we all saw that, oh, this 104-year-old woman is doing standing leg curls with very, very light ankle weights, we knew that she was capable of, again, going out, living by herself, and proceeding with her life. So altogether, that was at least a half a year. But even after discharging, she continued to do KAATSU. She would go to the therapist, and they would continue to do that. So it was
Amazing.
minimum 6 months, possibly seven, but she continued on with KAATSU.
Amazing. Amazing how, like, 6 months from being bedridden to doing leg curls like that.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
The second question actually I have is, so how long did she live? Like, is she still alive?
No, unfortunately, that was let's see, that was about, oh gosh, um, that was about 15, 13 or 14 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
So, and at the time, I was going back and forth between California, where I live, and Tokyo. And she has since passed away. But before she passed away, she actually made a video for us
Oh.
where it was so cute. She said, "How do people know that I'm 104 years old?" So she actually has in the video she actually shows her face and she holds up her birth certificate that actually says, her birth date. It's all in Japanese, but that was her way to tell people, like, I'm not going to live forever, but at 104 years old, this is my proof of my age. And she was so cheerful all the
Yeah.
time. And and she was in a hospital setting initially, so there were other people who were doing physical therapy in addition to her. So you would just look at this 104-year-old and go, wait a second, I'm only 75. I have no excuse. If she's pushing herself like that, then I want to push myself like that. So she was a really inspirational individual.
Nice. I
Yeah.
would love to have a story like that here in the US.
Yeah.
Somebody 104, because it's that, it's culture, of course, and things like KAATSU that does help. But I that's one thing I hope for, is the longevity being as such, being able to be more vibrant, being able to walk around a little bit more. So that's my hope in terms of, our country here.
Yeah. And this is what we actually say for KAATSU users. You say, whatever age you are, if you're 35, 45, 55, 65, whatever age, what we want you to do, we want you to become, is at least have the same amount of stamina, strength, agility, balance, a smoothness of walking, cognitive awareness 10 years from now as you do now. So
Hmm.
if you're 65, when you're 75, we want you to be at least as strong, at least as cognitively aware, at least have the same amount of stamina as you do now.
Right.
Now, our ultimate goal is for that to improve, and there's some limitation to that, but that is our goal. So when people come to us and they ask, I I had a hip replacement, I had a knee replacement, or haven't worked out because I was raising kids, or I've just let myself go. That's okay. We say, what is your goal for 10 years from now? Our goal for you is for your healthfulness to be better 10 years from now than it is today. And that sort of rings a bell. People are usually thinking, how do I feel today? And our goal is, how are you going to feel 10 years from now? And what
Yeah.
steps are you going to take 10 years from now to be the best, it sounds corny, but be the best you can be physically. And that helps your personality, your outlook, your cognitive awareness, everything falls from there.
Yes. 100% agree with that. It's working for who you're going to be in 10 years from now, because we're going to, most of us is going to live
Yeah.
10 years from now.
Yes.
So it's not always like throw up our hands, okay, well, life is over, it's going to decline. And it's more or less like, how can I show up today to be a better person, or,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, all of that.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a great thing to remember.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw on the website, it was called cycle mode. Can you
Yes.
explain a little bit more of what cycle mode is?
Okay, so that is the key modality of KAATSU. That is what Dr. Sato figured out in that early evolution of the technology. And the cycle mode is actually when we have our bands, and I have one of the bands here.
Yeah.
This band actually inflates and deflates every 30 seconds. So it inflates for 30 seconds and then deflates for 5 seconds, inflates for 30 seconds, deflates for 5 seconds. And that is the process that we call the cycle mode. And so what happens is we start off in a low pressure, very much similar to when you blow up a balloon and you start blowing up the balloon, it gets this big. Then you put some more breaths of air in and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what we want your capillaries, veins, and arteries to do. We start off not putting a lot of stress on them, but putting gentle amount of stress, putting a little bit of compression in the bands. And so your capillaries starting to a little bit get more pliable, more elastic. 30 seconds goes on, we give it a little rest, then we put a little more pressure. We can't consciously uh, feel the difference between the first 30 seconds and the second 30 seconds. But our capillaries can. Our capillaries are so tiny that it actually has an impact. And the impact is very visible because what happens is your hand becomes a nice pink and then rosy and then red, an indication that the blood is really circulating at a much higher level than before. But we do that very, very gently, very, very gradually, very, very incrementally. And we do that because before Dr. Sato and I started KAATSU and we launched it around the world, we did a 10-year study, 10 years on over 12,000 patients, mostly older, at the University of Tokyo Hospital, where we did very, very controlled studies. And over 2,000 of them had cardiac issues. So they had heart attacks, strokes, heart bypass, surgeries, etc. So they were a very, very vulnerable population. But we wanted to prove the safety and the efficacy of KAATSU on the most vulnerable people, because we figured if we can prove KAATSU works and is safe, primarily safe, and works with people who are very, very vulnerable, with heart issues, and then the rest of the population should be more than safe and more than effective. And that's what we did. Before we sold one unit, we wanted to make sure, with over 12,000 people overseen by a team of cardiologists, how safe this KAATSU cycle was. And we determined that starting out very, very gently and then gradually increasing the pressure was very comfortable for most people, for actually every person. There was no complaint that it hurt or I didn't feel well, etc. Because we knew KAATSU is a great technology. We knew that from day one. But if the users, if consumers, if people felt, I feel uncomfortable, or I don't like it, or it hurts, or some sort of negativity, then it didn't matter how great the technology was. People were just going to ignore it. So we wanted to make it gentle, comfortable, easy to use, and convenient to use. And when we achieved all those things, then we were able to overlay that with safety, overlay that with it does work, and this is the way it does work. And then we launched the company in 2014.
Awesome. That's great market research.
Yeah.
It's you kind of have to do that in order for it to really take off. It's not just like you said, the technology, like, oh gosh, the technology is great. The customer user has to be top notch, if not even better than the technology. And then obviously it all just works out. It's something I wish my mom had. She had a quadruple bypass surgery, and I think, something like this could obviously could have helped, alleviate some of the, issues that she's had. So, so how can you walk us through how we get started? Is this only online? Is this in hospitals? Where is KAATSU at, and how can we get started?
Yes. So our biggest user is the U.S. military, and in our civilian population, we have mostly, again, the 70% of our users are over the age of 40. Of those 70% of our civilian users, 70% of those are women. So
Okay.
about half of all of our users worldwide, including those in the military, are female, which frankly, again, it might be my male bias. I would have never thought that in the beginning, because when I first met Dr. Sato, it was used by a lot of athletes. And of course, we're in Japan, so there was a lot of male athletes.
Right.
But as time went on, we found that the improvement for women was huge because we had this modality that was gentle and easy to use. And whether you're a woman in Tokyo or a woman in New York City, there's things you have to do in the course of the day.
Right.
whatever that is. And people's lives are getting increasingly busy. And when we made KAATSU convenient, then they started to use it more and more. And so these people started to use KAATSU. Then we as we started to grow, when I met Dr. Sato, there was only 20 people who did KAATSU worldwide, and all of them were in the Tokyo area. Now, as we grow, we're now in 49 countries.
Mhm.
And so now, in order to buy the product or understand how to use the product, you simply go to kaatsu.com online, you order it there, and then there's many ways we teach people. And part of this was due to the pandemic. When
Mhm.
the pandemic hit, up until that point, we had done, I would say 90% of our users were people we met face to face. All of a sudden, we didn't have the ability to meet people face to face. And so what we did was we completely shifted to an online model where we would teach people online on Zoom.
Right.
We used FaceTime, we used WhatsApp, we used every means possible to actually show people, okay, this is the band, this is how you put it on, and we to this day we continue to show, okay, this is how you put it on. These are the buttons that you hit. You turn it on this way, and we really take people as best we can in the virtual mode, virtual, tool to teach them as if you and I were in the same room and you and I were facing each other. And so we just, we go, this is what you do. This is the button you press. If you want to do legs, you do that. If you do, constant mode. And we really walk through the process with individuals, both the equipment, and then also they are free to ask us, anything. How do I use it for rehabilitation?
Mhm.
Can I use it for jet lag? My son plays basketball in high school and he wants to, play in college. How do I help him get better? My daughter, she fell off her bike and she broke her arm. What do I do? Can I use KAATSU to help her arm feel heal better? And so we have these weekly Zoom calls, and we get questions from cardiac issues to, I saw this online. What is it? And therefore, the pandemic actually helped us grow much, much better. But to answer your question, go to kaatsu.com, order it there. And a lot of people, I created the website, so I know my weaknesses. It's not the best website. If you have any questions, you can always join our Zoom sessions that are Tuesday and Thursdays at 12 noon New York time, Eastern Standard Time. And we're on as long as you wish. If you have any questions, which a lot of people do, then you send us an email at info at kaatsu.com. And there we actually are able to answer in very detailed, ways how you can use it. And we have users, grandparents, great grandparents, to working adults, to people who, just, I don't know, tripped on the sidewalk walking
Yeah.
their dog. We also use it, by the way, with animals. The
Mm.
mammals, whether they're a human or a horse or a dog, can use KAATSU in the same way if they've broken any part of their body. If you have someone who is an amputee, know someone who is disabled, paraplegic in some way, we have innumerable protocols, and we teach people who are missing a limb for whatever reason, or had some horrific accident or what have you. How can they use it if they're in a wheelchair, if they're in a walker, if they're in a cast? All these things that we want to teach people. It's a very simple product, but it does very profound things. And in order to take this simple product and achieve very profound changes in the body, you need to know the protocols, the applications. And so that is mostly, I would say, 90% of what I spend my time on is teaching people how to use this simple equipment for their more complicated problems.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for all of that. I'm going to share all of that information, the website, the email, everything in the show notes. So all they have to do is just click on it.
Thank you.
So is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to talk about today?
Oh, I mean, I have two sisters. I have three daughters. My mother at 86 is still using the product 3 times a day.
Nice.
And so I am surrounded all the time by discussions that my sisters, my daughters, my mother, my aunts have. One of the big uses of KAATSU that we don't promote or we don't focus on is what we call KAATSU beauty.
Mm.
Now we spoke earlier about the skin elasticity, and people say, well, how does this muscle building cuts kind of thing help the skin? Well, we all know that right underneath the skin we have just innumerable capillaries. Now, whether you had a knee surgery where you have this big scar on your knee, or you may have had plastic surgery or some issue, maybe you scratch it, whatever the issue is, we have what we call KAATSU protocols, which actually helps the capillaries become more elastic under the skin, right under the skin. It doesn't matter whether it's on your lower body, upper body, face, or what have you. So we don't want to be seen as a skincare company, because what we're really doing is we're helping that elasticity of the capillaries veins. That's our core. That's at our very core. How you apply that for your own needs is your choice. But we do have a whole area of our protocols that we call KAATSU Beauty. And,
Mhm.
I just know what my sisters, my daughters, and my mother is concerned about. And beauty is one of those. So that's an area where I think a lot of people, male and female, would be interested in.
Of course, of course. We want to ditch those products, right? We don't want to be consuming
Yeah.
thousands of dollars just to try to look younger or feel younger. So if we can, put it all in one mechanism and one thing, I think it'll be a little bit happier and a lot, have more money basically instead of shelling out all this money. Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you for coming on, Steve. It was such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more, to get to know more KAATSU and how it's going to help, my audience and even me being in the 40 plus years trying to live vital as much as possible. So I want to thank you again for being on here. Is there any other place that people can find you, or is it just the website?
Yeah, the website. I mean, we do have an Instagram account. We do some stuff on Twitter and Facebook. We do
Okay.
have a YouTube channel. So all of those kind of standard social media, we're there. But really, if anybody has any questions whatsoever, info@kaatsu.com comes directly to me. I answer several dozens of emails every single day. I don't view this as work. It's a mission that I really love doing. So I wake up in the morning and I feel energetic. I feel happy to be answering questions and helping people. And everybody in our company must share this kind of love and passion for helping others. And so, if you have any questions, info@kaatsu.com. Ask anything that you would like. We have decades of published peer review scientific articles and research on this. So there is rarely any question that we can't answer. And if we can't answer it, there are some very, very specific diseases that I don't know about, that Dr. Sato and the cardiologists have not heard about. It could be a tropical disease. We have had people stung in the water by different things that we don't know about. And so, we'll be very honest. If we don't know the answer, we'll say that, or we'll find out what the proper protocols are. So we're here to help.
Perfect. And I can definitely see the passion and feel the passion that you have for KAATSU and what you do.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been in it for a long time. You have it helped you. It helps your family. So I definitely see that passion coming through. And
Yeah.
I'll definitely link up all of the information, of course, in the show notes. So it'll be there right in people's eyes. So
Thank you. Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
so much for coming on. And for everybody else, we'll see you later. Take care.
Bye.